Hi guys, welcome back to Laura Does Maths. Today we're looking at GCSE plus topics. So this is our higher level GCSE topics that we're also going to need for A level. It's going to help prepare us. We're going to look at the sine and cosine rule. It's going to find us lengths and angles in triangles, and these are going to be non-right angle triangles. Okay, two equations on the bottom for you that you're going to need to learn. The sine rule down here and the cosine rule. Now you do need to learn these formulas, unfortunately, so better get going. Okay, right, so first thing we need to look at though is how to label our triangles. Now we've got a triangle here, it's a non-right angle triangle, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to use uppercase letters to denote my angles. Okay, so I'm going to say I've got angle capital A, angle capital B, and angle capital C. And then opposite those angles, I'm going to use lowercase letters that are the same to denote the sides. So lowercase a, that one's lowercase b, and this one's lowercase c. Now this is going to ensure that we can match up angles with the opposite sides, and that's going to help us use the cosine rule. You don't need to drop the arrows in, but they do look quite fancy. Okay, let's have a look at some examples then. So these are sine rule examples. Now you might notice that at the bottom I've got two different versions of the formula. They look very similar, but one is a reciprocal of the other. It's been flipped over. Now, that's because it's going to make my working out a lot easier, and it's going to make my rearranging a lot easier if I use the one where I've got sine of my angles on top when I want to find angles, and use the one where I've got my length on top when I want to find lengths. It's not a massive issue though, so if you haven't done it, you've used a different one, it'll be absolutely fine. You'll just have to do more rearranging later on. Okay, so let's have a look at our first example. I want to find angle C here. So that means I know this is going to be labelled as lowercase c, because my opposite side. And then let's just call this angle A, why not? And then my opposite side to 88 is 6.4, so that'll be little a. Now I'm going to use this formula. So what I'll do is I'll put the one I want to find first. So sine of c over little c is equal to sine of a over a. Now you don't need to do this step, but I find it really helps me, especially when I've got quite complicated formulas, to write the formula out first, then substitute in. It's also really helpful for your markers, because then they know exactly what you're doing. Sometimes it's so easy to make a mistake when you put stuff into a calculator. It's definitely worth getting those method marks like this. Okay, so we don't know what big C is, so I can leave that as sine of c, but we do know that little c is 4.9. And we do know that sine of A is going to be sine of 88, and that's going to be divided by 6.4. Now I could put sine of 88 into a calculator right now, but I'm going to leave off for a second because I want to do it in one big go. So let's keep rearranging. So sine of c, I want to know what sine of c is equal to. Now in the line above it's divided by 4.9, so I'm going to have to multiply by 4.9. to bring that over to the other side. So I've got 4.9 multiplied by sine of 88 over 6.4. Now I'm going to put this whole right hand side here into a calculator and figure out what that is. Now just a word to the wise, when you put it into a calculator you do need to make sure that you've got closed brackets around that 88, otherwise sometimes you might get something called a syntax error. That's your most common cause of that. Okay, when we write it out we don't need to have the brackets necessarily. That's a bit more of a formatting thing, that's up to you, but when you type into a calculator it will need that second bracket there. The first one it will do automatically for you. Okay, so in my calculator that should give me 0.765 ... Now that doesn't look like an angle to me. That's because I've worked out what sine of c is. So I want to unsign it. So what I'm going to use is inverse sine. So that should be shift and then sine. And then you can use your answer button on your calculator to make sure you're referencing that exactly. Okay, so inverse sine of that should get me 49.9211. Now I always write out a nice exact answer, make sure we've got our units, and then I would round later on. So let's say that's 49.9 degrees. and that is to 1 decimal place. Okay. And we can have a look at the diagram and say, yeah, it looks about right. It's always good to do a sanity check, but don't put too much store on it, just because sometimes these are not drawn particularly to scale. But it's always worth having a little look. Okay, second example. Now we've got 9.4 here. We've got side D. We've got 2 angles, which is great. Now we can match up that angle with that side, but this angle is not going to match with side D. However, we know angles in a triangle are going to add up to 180. So I can say, right, let's figure this out. 180 minus 72 minus 63. Fastest finger first, guys. I'm going to do it on a calculator because that's how I roll today. Is 45 degrees. Okay, so that's 45. Now I've got that angle there, I can match it up with angle D. So let's call that capital D. And we might as well call this one. We'll go back to using A's. Why not? Okay, so we want to find little d here. So I'm going to use the version down the bottom where I've got my sides on top. So I'm going to write out my formula again. If you guys are a bit pressed for time, you don't need to do this. But I find this step really, really helps me. Okay, we're looking good, apart from my dodgy handwriting. So side D is what we want. Now sine of D, well, I know that's sine of 45 because I've just worked that angle out. And then I've got 9.4 instead of A. And then it's sine of 72. Okay, now we're going to multiply by sine of 45. To get rid of this fraction here. So D is going to be equal to 9.4 times sine 45. This is when you put into your calculator and you make sure that you've closed those brackets. Divided by sine of 72. Okay, let's work that out then. So fastest finger first, you guys race me. 94 times sine of 45. All divided by sine of 72. Okay, so that's going to give me a value for D of 6.98886 ... And we're measuring in centimetres. Okay, so that's centimetres. So let's round that nicely. So that's D is equal to 6.99 centimetres. And we'll go 2 decimal places. Okay, now that's how you use the sine rule. I hope that helped, guys. For more maths help, one-to-one tuition and group sessions, please visit www.laura-does-maths.co.uk or www.facebook.com/laura-does-maths. Or you could email inquiries@laura-does-maths.co.uk. Bye!